Dr. Fred. Welcome to the Easy Conversations podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm really excited to have you here and learn from you. I know we had the opportunity to connect, and there's a lot we'll be talking about, especially when it comes to medication and some of the disorders we're seeing in the world today. But before we jump into all of that, I do want to give you an opportunity to share with us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what's brought you here.
Okay, good. Thank you. And thanks for having me on the show. I'm really looking forward to our conversation as well. So my name is Dr. Fred, or Fred Moss, and some people still call me Dr. Moss. And I have been a psychiatrist for 36 years, and I was in mental health for 9 years before that as well. And I went into mental health after dropping out of college the second time and vowing that I would never go back to university under any conditions again. And I was interested in kind of finding out what my whole life was about, maybe driving around the country and learning from my own adventures. And I told my mom that I would never go back to school. And she said, that's fine, but you have to get a job. Moms will be that way. So I got a job at a state mental health facility for adolescent boys. And as a child care worker, is where I first really learned what I wanted to learn my whole life, was that communication is at the center of everything. I knew that from a child. I think we all know that, but I remember being in my playpen and watching my parents and my brothers, 10 and 14 years older than me, communicate. And me thinking that someday I would be able to communicate well as well. And I was raised to be pretty precocious. My brothers taught me things that most kindergartners didn't know. So by the time I was in kindergarten, I knew a little bit about some things. I knew how to add, I knew how to subtract, I knew how to read, I knew how to write. And that was different than most of my peers. So I was ahead of most of my peers that way. I knew a little bit about sex, drugs, and rock and roll as well. I knew about Procol Harum by the time I went into kindergarten. So that was fun. Yeah. And I communicated. I just knew that's where the life was. And I spoke a lot during elementary school, such that there's no way that there's any elementary school teachers who have forgotten having Fred as a student. I'm pretty positive about that. I wanted to learn to communicate, and I really saw that's where the magic was. And it didn't happen in school, and it didn't happen at college at the University of Michigan. So I left. And when I came back, I tried one more thing. There was a new industry breaking in, and it was my parents and my brothers thought I would be good at it. You might have heard of that industry. It's actually called computers. And they thought that I would be good. So that's why I went back to school the second time, because the only computer in all of Michigan was at the University of Michigan. And I was going to learn from there. And punch cards and batch jobs later, I'm like, no, I'm not going to be doing that. And left again. So that was the second dropout. And so at Fairlawn Center, where I was hired as a child care worker, is where I actually learned that I hated psychiatry. Not just a little, I really despised psychiatry. I was cool with my kids. I had good relationships with them. Mm-hmm. And if Jimmy and Johnny got in a fight, or Timmy was up too late, then we'd call the psychiatrist. He'd come down and he'd talk to the child for maybe 4 seconds. Then he'd talk to us for 7 seconds. Then he'd go in a nursing station and write something in a chart. And we would have to go retrieve the child and hold him down in the quiet room while we pulled down the back of his sweats and gave him an injection of some sort of antipsychotic, anti-anxiety cocktail. And if there was in a stupor for the next 24 hours, we'd have to chart that was a success story. And that just was barbaric and unacceptable to me. And I was now learning that communication was at the center of healing. So I made it my business to go back to school and become a psychiatrist so that I could bring communication into the world of psychiatry. Now, back then, medicines weren't quite the thing yet. In 1987 is when they became a thing. And that was with the advent of a drug called Prozac. And Prozac was a world changer, not much different than the world changers we have had in the last few years, as a matter of fact. It was on the cover of Newsweek and the cover of Time, just a picture of the pill itself. It was being touted as the next panacea, and there was significant talk about putting it into the water systems in the big cities in this country. And it didn't happen, I don't think, although it did find its way to the water system because people flush their stuff down the toilet wondering where it will go. But anyway, that's a whole different situation. So biological psychiatry and chemical imbalance theory came out while I was in medical school. And so by the time I got released from medical school, I was being typecast even more so as someone who was now taught to diagnose and then to medicate upon diagnosis. And these are the two things I didn't like doing at all when I was at Fairlawn. And now I was being called on doing that as a job. Over the next several years, I bit my tongue and had a lot of heartache and soul sacrifice while I diagnosed a number of people. Let's say I had over 30,000 patients in my storied career, and I've written for over 100,000 prescriptions, including refills, and I didn't like writing any of them.
Yeah.
I want to make that really clear. Every single prescription I wrote was like a zing, a zing, every one, because I really felt like it was doing a disservice to the client. And I raised my hand when I graduated and I said the Hippocratic Oath, which of course the famous 4 words of first harm. And I wasn't sure that I wasn't first not doing harm. And so it was a significant problem through most of my career and had me chucking and jiving and moving and doing whatever I could do to bring communication forward and to do as little diagnosing and medicating as I could just to keep my soul intact. But most jobs really had me ultimately really doing that. And I therefore have a great resume. My resume is insane. I've been in like nearly every single subspecialty known to Western psychiatry as a leader in the past. But that's not because I wanted to go to all these places. It's because I was searching desperately for a place that could work with this type of thinking. And so my CV shows that I've been all over, but it looks really like it's entertaining, it's amusing, it's astonishing, but it's all about me searching for a system that could work.
Yeah.
Eventually, this shifted. In 2006, I did some cool stuff. I had a practice of several thousand people, and I took my low-risk patients off of medicine. And this was thought to be pretty radical. It's funny, that's thought to be radical, and putting people on medicine is not thought to be radical. When you think about it, it should clearly be the other way around. But my patients, they got better, way better, reliably and predictably better, so much better, profoundly, that many of them, in fact, most of them, lost their original diagnosis altogether upon losing the medications that I was treating them with. So I began to really see that these medications are actually designed to perpetuate the symptoms they're marketed to treat. And that they're actually designed that way is really interesting. And it's not like I'm mad at the medicine. Initially, I was angry. I was like viciously angry, actually. I was violently angry. I wanted to go to the mountaintops and scream it to everybody. Stop medicating your children. Stop medicating your parents. Stop medicating yourself. It's only making things worse. But being violent doesn't land on ears very well. People tend to dismiss you. So I had to learn how to calm it down, chill it out a little bit, and find a way to deliver the truth. And so that's what I've done since 2006 forward. And in fact, have created a coaching method called transformational restorative coaching. And I became the undoctor. And the undoctor is someone who undiagnoses, unmedicates, and then undoctrinates people, leaving them out of the medical industrial complex, psychiatric industrial complex.
Yeah.
That's what my work has been. I've written now a couple books. I've been on I've probably 275 podcasts, and I've hosted my own podcast. And I like taking stages and keynotes, and I like being a healer, and I still have a conventional job. And this is the best conventional job I've ever had. And that is that they vetted me out after a podcast. They asked me if I'd come work with them, and I do. And they allow me to play with my elbows out, but not my wings spread. A little bit closer. They understand that Dr. Fred's that guy, but they still expect me to diagnose people because that's how we get paid.
Right.
And to medicate people on demand, which I still do occasionally. But my specialty is really helping people stay off medication and realize that maybe there's nothing wrong with them in the first place. It's a crazy world we live in. Have you noticed?
Yeah. No, I'm sure we're going to dive into that. And based on what you're sharing, I'm assuming you're probably a very popular guy in the field, right? Speaking up against.
I'm not unpopular in the field. The idea here isn't, look, it's doctors already know that these medications are not effective. They already know that they cause problems. If they didn't know that, they'd serve it to their own children, but they don't, and they don't take it themselves either. And the reason they don't is they already have an inherent understanding that they don't work. Now, it isn't about the medicine. Let's keep that in mind. It's about the training, and it's about people thinking that there's something wrong with them. So I'm not the doctors are the prescribing public, the ones who are creating treatment plans. I still have a treatment plan. I just want to communicate with you.
Yeah.
I want to connect with you. I just want to be here and actually make things happen inside of a resonating human connection.
Yes.
That's not flying against any of the other doctors in any real way. That's what they should be doing too, even if they're prescribing medicine, and they know that.
Right.
So I'm not saying anything that violent or that counterculture, in fact, other than saying what we already always know, which is that these medicines aren't doing the job we wish they were, that people are on multiple different medications and frankly getting worse over and over again. You look around the public. Have you noticed mental health improving? I don't think I have.
No.
That's because the present treatment plans are ineffective for mental health. And if you really want to have somebody improve and to step into their greatness, connect with them. Moment healing will take place.
Yeah. And I do want to come back to the healing piece, but before we do, I want to understand your own journey a bit more, because it sounds like you've been able to forge your own path to a certain extent. Like you said, you can't spread your wings fully, but how were you able to navigate those early stages of being in this career where you felt so conflicted? Like, how were you able to keep on going and then finally get to the point where you are today, where you feel like you are doing a bit more in terms of the communication piece?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I'm not sure how I made it through. I've quit medicine 4 separate times on a dime, where I was like, okay, that's enough. I can't do this anymore. I can't restrain people. I can't medicate people against their will. I can't put people in the hospital. I can't make up diagnoses that have people think that they're worse than other people or less than other people. I can't be violent in that way with diagnoses and treatment. Now, with that said, I really want to make it very clear that there is a group of people out there, a very significant group of people who are very happy with their diagnosis and very happy with their treatment and happy with their medication. And if that's the case, where they wouldn't want to trade it away for anything in the world, they should absolutely keep doing what they're doing. Mm-hmm. I'm not here to argue that even a little bit. If you're sure that you wouldn't trade your life for anything better than what you have going on in any area of life, you should keep doing that, because that's a magical space to land on.
Yeah.
This conversation is for the hundreds of millions of people who don't fall in that category, who already know that they're being mistreated, undertreated, overtreated, misdiagnosed, underdiagnosed, overdiagnosed, and they understand that the system is not serving them up right.
Mm-hmm.
People for which the system appears to be serving them up right, no argument at all. Like, seriously, continue doing what you're doing. Great for you. More power to you.
Yeah.
So let's make that really clear. And so how did I last through the early years? I held my breath. I held my nose. I was duplicitous. I did shit that was misaligned with who I knew myself to be. That was very painful.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a matter of just observing it. That's the other thing. It was a matter of being the cause of it. Mm-hmm. The doctor's signature was mine.
Yeah.
I wasn't just in a system that was broken. I was a leading force of the system that was broken. And that's where the real pain came in. People like, oh yeah, how could you handle being in behind closed doors in the inpatient units or the jails or prisons? That's not the problem. Seeing it, we all can see it. There's only one doctor who's actually writing all this stuff, and that was me the whole time. And that's where the trouble was. I feel very fortunate that my heart was able to sustain itself till this point of time. And I have had a significant heart event actually in 2023, just a couple years ago. My aorta split. I had a dissecting aortic aneurysm, an acute event that has a significant mortality associated with it. And energetically, I would say that was caused by all of these years splitting my heart in two years ago. Here I am, so whatever.
Yeah. And obviously it sounds like you're in a better place, because now you feel like maybe it's a question here. Do you feel like you're contributing in a different way now that you're able to speak about it and you're communicating with your patients and trying to understand if medication is truly the route or it's not? And does that feel like a bit different than what you were doing before?
Yeah, I think so. When I was muted early on, just to keep my job or just to please the supervisor, that was, I think, harder than what I'm doing now. I think I'm now known as doctor. The reason I've been on 275 podcasts is because I guess I'm interesting. And so that's pretty interesting to all of a sudden be interesting. Like I'm interesting because I'm different. And I don't plan to be different. I plan to just be honest. So let's just look at it. Let's just look. Let's be honest and look at it. What the hell's happening in mental health? Here's what's happening. People aren't getting better.
Yeah.
People aren't getting better. And some people would claim that they're getting better. And we can have discussions about that. What is the cost of getting better in this situation? You get to walk around and say, honey, that wasn't me. That was my bipolar disorder. That wasn't me. That was my ADHD. That wasn't me. That was my PTSD. That wasn't me. That was my narcissism. That wasn't me. That was my major depressive disorder. That was my, and so in some ways, when you get a diagnosis, you get an explanation for the clumsiness and for the things in your life that are going on that you're not necessarily aligned with, which is called humanity. It's called humanity. I don't know about you, but it's 8:20 in the morning. I've already made a handful of mistakes today. I don't know about you, but I've already made a whole handful of errors today. I've caused trouble today already.
Right. Absolutely.
That's called life.
Yeah.
That's called life. That's not called sick. That's not called pathological. It's not called psychiatrically ill. That's called being a human. Now, when we can capture, that's when we can start and stop this cycle. Meaning, if you never think you're sick, then you won't go to the doctor thinking you need to be fixed or thinking you need a label to explain why you're doing things that you're not happy with.
Yes.
So the idea here is to really help people see that maybe there's nothing wrong with them in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
We don't blame a log for burning in a fire, right? It's not a log's problem. A log does when it's in a fire.
Yeah.
And we're in a fire. This is a fire. This life is a fire. This is hard shit to be human.
Yeah.
But it's been hard shit for centuries.
Yes.
You're not going to be able to look back in the history of the archives of humanity and find a period of time where people were writing that, nope, this isn't hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been hard forever.
Yes. Yes.
And so can we just acknowledge that without coming up with the equation? And it's the Prozac culture that created the equation that if you're uncomfortable, it means there's something wrong with you. If you're uncomfortable, it does not mean there's something wrong with you. It probably means you're totally accurate.
Yeah. Yeah.
How long would it take me and you to come up with 100 reasons to be depressed right now? Maybe about 3?
It doesn't take much. No.
How about 100 reasons to be nervous?
Yeah.
How about 100 reasons to be terrified? How about 100 things that are distracting us?
Yeah.
How about 100 places where you're awkward? 3 minutes apiece, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not a problem. In fact, if we took a break, we could do it in 3 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. What you're touching on is something very crucial because humans are flawed inherently, right? So to be able to dismiss that and not take responsibility is where you're highlighting a problem. Because if you're able to say, I have this disorder, for example, then that excuses me from taking responsibility and improving on that. And then the second piece is when we've become a culture where we're, for lack of a better term, everything is soft, right? So if anytime we experience hardship or adversity, because that creates discomfort, we need to go find a solution and put a Band-Aid on it. Now, on the flip side, one of the arguments I've heard, and I don't agree with this, but I do want to present it, that once an individual knows what's wrong with them, quote unquote, they can have an answer for all these years of struggle they've had and fix it, right? What do you have to say to that?
So first of all, let me speak to the Band-Aid notion, and then we'll come back to this question. So the Band-Aid notion is, I wish that this stuff was just a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
I'd give it to everybody. I don't have problems with Band-Aids.
Yeah.
I'm good with Band-Aids. I would be glad to prescribe Band-Aids for everyone. However, these aren't Band-Aids. They're Band-Aids with razor blades embedded in them. Look, that's what's here. These medicines actually perpetuate or cause or increase or induce the symptoms they're marketed to treat. for real. If you're not depressed and I give you an antidepressant, you will be depressed soon.
Yeah.
If you don't have panic attacks and I give you a benzodiazepine, you can expect some panic attacks coming soon. If you're not psychotic and I give you an antipsychotic medication, you can expect psychotic symptoms soon. These medicines actually cause the symptoms they're marketed to treat. So let's make that really clear when we start looking at this concept of searching for a Band-Aid. That's how it's marketed. It's marketed as a Band-Aid, but the condition is so brutal, supposedly, that it never improves. That all we can do is hope to contain it.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't contain it. It creates a downward drift, a deterioration that's slow, that happens over time when you take medicine. The average person starts on one medicine, goes to 2 medicines, goes to 3 medicines, goes to 4 medicines, goes to 5 medicines. That wasn't the case when I first came out of medical school, but it's absolutely the case now. And why do we do that? Because new things happen upon taking medication that we blame on us.
Right.
See, we feel better when we take medicine. For a while, we might feel better. There's some of these medicines, they actually create a sense of comfort on an instant basis and then cause a worsening of the presenting symptoms. What's the proper use of a diagnosis? You're right. People, when they're told, when they're given the possibility that they have bipolar disorder or they have major depressive disorder or they have ADHD or they have schizoaffective disorder or post-traumatic stress disorder or whatever they think they have, there is a relief that happens when I relinquish my responsibility for my clumsiness.
Yes.
It's a relief.
Yeah.
But it's not that hard to see that there's a population struggling with that chunk of things. And as soon as we call them sick, then we medicate them or we give them a treatment plan that's already pre-designed for us that will cause deterioration over time, typically.
Yeah.
So this is a huge issue. What do I say to the people who are really happy to get their diagnosis? Okay, I get it. You got a diagnosis and now you think you know why you have been a fool for so long. The real reason you've been a fool for so long is because you're human.
Yeah.
We're fools.
Yeah.
Let's just face it. We don't have a clue what we're doing next. We really don't. If we do the same as everybody else, maybe we'll get a thumbs up and we maybe even do it a little bit better. Maybe we play football a little bit better. Maybe we lead a meeting a little bit better. So now we're a leader. And now we get the thumbs up that we must be normal. Do you know that we don't have a working universal diagnosis definition of what normal is?
Right.
So how do we have the audacity to call anybody abnormal if we don't even know what normal is?
Yeah. No, I agree. And we're not meant to be normal because we're all unique, right? We all have our own uniqueness to us, even at a DNA level. So this notion of wanting to feel normal doesn't make sense to me either. Now, the other thing you had mentioned to me previously was a lot of the times people are coming for a diagnosis. So when you tell them there's nothing wrong, they actually get upset. And they're like, this doctor doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm going to go find a doctor who's willing to prescribe me something. And so there's that piece. And then now we're in a culture where I hear it all the time, and even in the clinical practices I'm a part of, people are like sharing, I went on this medication. It changed my life. You should try this out. So yeah, okay, I had ADHD. I'm struggling with it. And it worked for that person. Maybe that's the medication I need. So then they're already going in thinking they have the answer and they just need the doctor's affirmation.
Yeah. Yeah. So it is true. The idea here is that people, I think it's the only subspecialty that if the doctor tells a patient that they're okay, they actually get pissed. And it's a very interesting phenomena, of course, because I'm jealous of my doctor friends who get to tell their patients that they're okay and then they don't get jumped on. I tell people that they're okay and people get really mad at me, like I must not know what the hell I'm talking about. See, people don't come to a psychiatrist in order to find out if there's something wrong with them. They come to a psychiatrist with a preconceived notion that there is something wrong with them and they want a label that they can give themselves so they can tell their wives and children, honey, that wasn't me. Yeah. That was my alphabet soup of a diagnosis. That's what I have now. Yeah, it causes some comfort. And I get it. When you're told that you have a condition, there's something that's really relieving. At least it's not me. At least I don't have to take responsibility for these things. And again, with no disrespect, here's the truth. If you want to take responsibility for the errors I made today, by all means, go ahead. If I can give you the responsibility for my mistakes, I'm in.
Yeah.
For sure, man. I don't want to shoulder these things. I've been a fool already a few times this morning. I just assume blame you for it, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's what diagnoses tend to do. And then the second half of the question, let me remember what it was. Remind me, it was about medicine.
I think it's just people sharing their own medications with each other.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So the story on that is these medicines actually are created to give some immediate sense of relief. But the damage that's getting done is slow and insidious. So, for instance, we talk about, I like to use this example of the damage that gets done with medicine. We'll talk about the story of the mosquito bite on the elbow.
Okay.
And so let's say you had a mosquito bite on the elbow, but you trusted me as a doctor and you're like, Fred, man, I got this thing. It won't go away. It's a mosquito bite on my elbow and it's driving me nuts and I got to take care of it. You know anybody who can help me? And I'm like, yeah, I got somebody in Pasadena. You can drive over there and just tell him that I sent you. And he's got 100% cure rate. So you drive on over to his place and knock on his door, and he answers the door with his stethoscope over his shoulders and his glasses halfway down his nose and a well-manicured office, painted white. And he's got diplomas over there and some stock art over there. And he's got a sliding glass window with a pretty receptionist behind the desk who's got one of those earpieces on, and she's working the scheduling book of the scene. And he says, oh, you must be Dr. Fred's referral. You're like, yeah, that's me. So, well, come on in. You come to the right place. I have 100% cure rate. You're like, okay, cool. So you come on in, you say hello to the receptionist, go back to the office, and he takes out his magnifying glass, and you pull down your shirt, and you show him your elbow like this. And he takes that, he looks at it, and he goes, whoa, you got a mosquito bite. You're like, I know. That's why I'm here. I want to get some help with it.
Yeah.
And he says, you come to the right place, and I've never not cured somebody, so I'm likely to be really good with you as well. It's really great. And it'll only hurt for a minute. Doctors like saying that too. So you're like, okay, doc, whatever it takes, man. If Fred sent me here and it's going to work and 100% cure rate, I'm sick of this damn thing. Let's get it taken care of. He said, okay, here we go. And he pulls out a saw and he cuts off your arm at the shoulder.
Yep.
100% cure rate.
There you go. Yeah.
If you stay myopic enough, if you stay nearsighted enough, then you will think you got cured. You won't even notice that you don't even have a flipping arm anymore.
Yeah.
You'll just keep looking. Is there a mosquito bite on my elbow? Answer no. 100% cure. This is how these medicines work.
Yeah.
They do cause a reduction in the mood, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're not as depressed anymore, but you're not as anything anymore.
Yeah.
It didn't work on depression. It worked on your capacity to have real moods.
Yes.
Same thing with anxiety. Anxiety and called psychosis or fears or insomnia or awkwardness or whatever. There's these things, they numb out something, but at the cause of the razor blade in the Band-Aid or the sawed off arm, they cause maximum other damage that we usually don't notice. And we're willing to let those things go. Mm-hmm. Who needs an arm if my mosquito bite is already gone?
Yeah.
Without an arm, that was just the cost of doing business, apparently.
You know? Yeah.
That's how we go.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing from you, and this is something that's definitely been talked about quite a bit, but again, it's not mainstream, unfortunately, is the numbness and the impact it's having on our capacity to function in our brains. And we don't necessarily pay attention to that. Now, one of the other things I've observed in clinical work is a lot of my clients who were medicated, let's take ADHD as an example here. They would tell me that their doctors would say, you need to try the full spectrum of medication before we land on one to see which one's a better fit. And that would just blow my mind because they're essentially a science experiment. Let's medicate you with each one and let's see which one is a better fit. And that would just blow my mind. And then these people will report to me that they've lost their appetite, they feel like zombies. While to your point, on the surface, you're not feeling the disorder, but you're not feeling anything else either. And it's having other consequences, whether it's your sleep, your appetite. And that to me is a huge issue. Now, I do want to ask you again, like, why are these doctors treating their patients like science experiments and just saying, go try all of these medications?
No, I think you got to be very careful about pointing a finger on the doctors. Here's the thing. Everybody's in on this.
Yeah.
Everybody's in on this. The patients want it too. So they want to try everything and see which one is the best. The doctors are willing to do it because that's how we're trained. And it's the idea is the lowest effective dose of whatever medicine is best. Then sometimes you will run through the whole gamut. First of all, none of them are actually working. They're all causing your symptoms to get worse. And they're giving you look, you're just like caffeine. I have in a lot of ways. I can create a situation where you're more attentive to what you're doing. You're more capable of blocking out, like noise canceling almost with medication. However, I am definitely making your ADHD worse. Definitely. The ADHD medicines definitely make your ADHD worse. They help while you're taking them, but try missing a dose or two, and all of a sudden you're worse off than you've ever been. You can't even spell your name. Like you can't even get stuff done. And that's the medicine that is causing things to get worse. And that's why nearly everybody who starts a stimulant increases their dose or changes drugs. Doctors and patients have only been taught 3 ways to manage drugs, and that is to add, increase, or change medicines. So when we have those 3 things and you get worse or you get better, if you get worse, we add, increase, or change medicine, right? And what we could do is actually consider that the medicines are causing the problem and discontinue the medicine, but doctors are not taught that and patients do not expect that. So when the patients take a medicine and then they end up getting worse, if you were to tell them, we're not going to medicate you anymore, they're leaving.
Right.
They're going extra. They're like, what do you mean you're not medicated? I got worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if I was to say that there's a razor blade in that Band-Aid and it's time to come off your medicine altogether and try something altogether different, because maybe there's nothing wrong with you in the first place, I'm bound to meet with a little bit of resistance. It's a funky resistance. People, when they resist, I tell them they're okay. They tell me that they're not. They walk away and realize that was an absurd argument.
Yeah. Yeah.
They went to a specialist who told them, no, dude, you're good. Like, it's okay to be really nervous.
Yeah.
It's okay to be really scared. It's okay to be really sad. Like full scale tears, man.
Yeah.
It is totally okay. In fact, if you're not approaching those emotions, it's because you're already numb. Yeah. This world is tough. It's always been tough. Right. It may be a little bit tougher these days in certain areas, but it's hard to be a human.
Yeah.
It is totally okay to feel imbalanced in the world.
Yeah. There's something I do want to come back to around the medication side, but talking about the world, we can make the argument, yes, in some ways we have more distractions, so it could be harder to focus. But in other ways, we also have a lot more comfort. We don't have the same threats that our ancestors used to have. We don't have the same reasons to be depressed. We have food on the table. We have a roof over our head. So you can make the argument that there's more comfort today where it wasn't there centuries ago, right? But yeah, there could be other problems that are coming to the surface. But to your point, being here in this world is going to bring its own set of challenges, and medication wasn't something that was around up to 100 years ago, right? So what's changed in our human condition?
Yeah. I don't know if it's better or worse, harder or easier, more pain or less pain than it ever was. And I think that's a difficult argument to actually stand on and make. We're all being challenged all the time. And this possibility that they're coming, my wife this morning she reminded me very early in the morning that This is the attention economy, that the whole point now is to treat our commodity of our attention as the product.
Yeah.
They are winning. They're winning.
Yeah.
They're winning. I scroll way more often than I'm comfortable with.
Right.
I'm on podcasts all day. I'm staring at a freaking pixelated screen all day long, 12 hours. I'm in. I'm fish on a hook.
Yeah.
And most of us are.
Yes.
So again, if we decide that things like I don't have a reason to be depressed, this is an interesting question because we tend to link our depression to the external events of life. But when we take on a different approach of dealing with life as it occurs to us, meaning perhaps a meditation-based approach, a mindfulness approach, one where we can separate ourselves from our experiences, then no depression is no longer then caused by any external event. We don't need a reason to be depressed. Depression happens. Okay, depression. Why am I depressed? Oh, I just got depressed. I just felt depressed. Why am I depressed? Oh, it must be because of Vladimir Putin. Oh, really? Vladimir Putin over there made me depressed? That's pretty interesting. Vladimir Putin. I don't know about you, but I never met the dude.
Yeah, exactly.
I've never been in the same room as Vladimir Putin. And I get it. We can be, oh no, it's easy to be depressed about Vladimir Putin. Okay, I get it. You're right. But the truth is, that's not depression. That's a response system. And once we get mindful, we can start realizing that these events and these experiences happen. Thank you for sharing. I'm right here. I choose not to become that right now. So mindfulness and 20 other things are part of the Moss method, which I have compiled. And I didn't create any of them. I'm not responsible for creating any of them, but they're age-old techniques to help us like reduce the misery that comes as a default with being alive in the present world.
Yeah.
Gratitude, mindfulness, yoga, tai chi, nutrition, dehydration, creativity, spirituality, service, pets, nature walk, books, journals. These are all very effective ways to mitigate the super pain that is sitting here as a default, being a human in present day culture. There is super pain as a default of being a human being in our present culture, for sure.
Yes. Yeah. And what I'm hearing from you, and based on some of those practices you're talking about, a lot of them are ancient practices that have been around for a really long time. And I think it's important to acknowledge that there's a reason why these practices have stood the test of time, because they work, right?
Exactly.
Somehow we've become, I think it's self-induced in a way that we feel like we need to take on more, or we need to control everything around us. But that's the idea of spirituality, to a sense, is letting go and focusing on, you only have control over your attitude, your thoughts. The rest is not in your hands. So just focus on what's in front of you, and the rest will sort itself out. But we don't live in that world, right? And to your point, we're all tied into this, whatever it is, this technological world where everything's accessible to us immediately. And that creates another issue, I think.
Yeah, you're right. To see like this idea, like good luck controlling the world, first of all. We're not the first culture to want to control the world. And we think that controlling the world is even possible, and we're going to pursue it with all our mightiness. And that we're not going to, the fact that we're too busy to meditate is really fascinating. Because if you're too busy to meditate, that you need to meditate more than ever. There's no such thing as being too busy to meditate. And can you find 20 minutes to meditate? Yeah, you can. Yeah. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your job is. I don't care how many kids you have. I don't care how many jobs you have. Can you find 20 minutes to meditate? For sure. Yeah. Will it change your life profoundly, foundationally, and fundamentally if you, in fact, infuse a meditation practice into your life? 1,000,000% chance. Yes, it will.
Yeah.
Yes, it will. It just will. No, will there be any side effects? No. Will there be any costs? No. Will there be any insurance statements? No. Will you get a diagnosis? No. Will it work? Yes. Okay, that's a good one. And same thing with gratitude, same thing with nutrition and hydration, same thing with watching organic foods and really being careful about the toxicities we take in.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with creativity, same things with nature and books and journaling,
Yeah.
having authentic conversations with people. And how about spirituality? And how about being of service, ultimately being of service, helping anybody do anything?
Yeah.
That will work. No
Right.
kidding.
Yeah.
That you want to feel good about something, go help anybody do anything.
Yeah.
Come back and tell me how that felt.
Yeah. I agree.
It's always great. Service is tremendous.
Absolutely. But it doesn't make money, right?
Maybe it doesn't. Neither is going to the bathroom, and you still have to do it.
Yeah.
Not to be measured by whether or not it makes money. Go make money the way you make money. And here's the other thing. I have recently tripped into a business that I'm now really creating, a free educational model for financial literacy that I'm opening up for people. And I partner with a few friends, and I'm now in this group where providing people with this free education of financial literacy and getting everything like honed in and getting it stable and understood so that people understand where they are in their finances and understand multiple ways to earn money or to spend money or to save money or to invest money. Yeah. This is a much more powerful strategy to help people feel useful and worthwhile in a life than I ever medicated. That's much more powerful than any of the medicines I've ever prescribed.
Yeah.
So I'm now in a group, and my project and my focus and my future is about really providing people this educational model of financial literacy so that people can learn what multi-handed income is, having money really work for you, using the compounding effect, using taxes, using risk, and really understanding what tax exempt means. Mm-hmm. Really understanding that, because if you ask people when they're depressed and they're anxious, you ask them, what do you think would happen that could make your life better? They might joke, but in reality, most of them will say something like, use $1 million. How about if we can create a situation where there's unlimited income, really? No matter what you're doing, no matter who you are, no matter what your experience is, no matter how many letters you have after your name, what if I can really assist you in getting financial security? Because once you have financial security, life shifts considerably.
Yeah.
Way more profoundly than any of these psychiatric medications, actually.
Yeah. It does alleviate stress, but it doesn't get you to the point of experiencing joy and contentment, which I find a lot of people are lacking when they're experiencing depression. So how do you, and those are the things we need to your point, as you touched on earlier, the gratitude, the service, but that's not, again, my point around it's not making money because the system's not making money, right? You're solving your own problems. But if you're going and getting medicated while the system's making money, and that's in their best interest, right? So it is.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, for sure. When you pay for your insurance, or you pay for your copay, or you pay for your co-insurance, or you pay for whatever you pay for, the medication, you're not the one getting rich in that game. That's for sure. Yeah. And you're not only that, you're disabling yourself. So you're, in many cases, making yourself incapable of actually functioning and bringing in a natural revenue stream.
Yeah. Now, there's one thing that you had mentioned to me was when medication's used as a bridge, there's no incentive to come off. I know you touched on it briefly, but are you able to expand on, okay, because there's the argument that, okay, someone's disorder is really debilitating, but the medication can at least get them to a baseline functioning, which can serve as a bridge. But to your point, there's really no incentive then to come off.
Yeah, I have some friends, some very highly respected colleagues in the field who, we sometimes get on a boat together in a stream. But he's got a very cool little pathway, the Everglades of California, pretty much, that he takes us on. Anyway, we've had some great discussions about this topic. And can we put a blanket on the fire and put out the fire long enough to actually put something new into the flame and then restart the fire in some controlled fashion? My question with that, or my concern with that, is once you're on medicine, if it actually worked, who would have the audacity to ever take medicine off if it worked to get you to the end point? Now, that might be the mosquito bite in the elbow concept, but why would you come off if it worked? And if it didn't work, why then you will keep on medicating. So the incentive of a bridge It's like, when do you agree that it's time to take you off of medicine and get you back to being the human that you know yourself to be? These medicines do alter the way that you think. They alter the way that you behave. They alter the way that you interact. They do. That was their full intention. That's what they do. I'm not saying they don't do anything. They do alter that. In fact, they create their own chemical imbalance. You are not chemically imbalanced until you took medicine, and now you're chemically imbalanced by design, by full intention. Of course, you're taking medicine in order to imbalance your mind. Taking medicines as a bridge towards not taking medicines is that the doctors are not trained and the patients are not expecting to be able to come off a medicine that was either effective or ineffective in reaching the ultimate goal.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is it is very risky to go on, even to use it as a bridge, because either the doctor may not be able to get you off, or you yourself may not be incentivized to get off because in your head it's working, right? So
right,
it's very
no arm, but no mosquito bite.
Yeah. Fair enough. Now, I do want to summarize here because we talked about the medicine piece quite a bit. And what you've stated over and over is there's nothing wrong with the individual. We're just being human in some of the experiences we're having, some of the thoughts we're having, some of the emotions we experience. Those are all part of being a human. So there's obviously non-medication ways of non-medicating yourself and finding a different way of dealing with things, right? And you touched on whether it's spirituality, mindfulness. What are some other things people can be more aware of, especially the ones that are navigating this, or they're already on medication and they hear this conversation, okay, what do I do now?
Well, that's two different questions. I think the number one thing to be aware of, if you're so-called going through this, and every single one of us is so-called going through this, first of all, is be careful who you hang out with. Just be careful. You can accept people who disagree with you. They're there. There's nothing that I'm not asking you to hate the people who disagree with you, but just, in fact, I'm asking you not to hate the people who disagree with you. Be very careful who you hang out with. There's a massive amount of toxicity that happens based on the crowd that we find ourselves. So that's at least one really big thing, is be careful who you hang out with, and be careful where you're gathering up your information from, and be careful what you say and how you say it, and listen to people as if you really care about what they have to say. Stay very curious and very wondrous. Be as present as possible and be open to whatever they have to say about whatever they have to say. Mm-hmm. I think that's the add-on at this one. And then the second question again was...
Well, if someone's already on medication and they hear this conversation.
Yeah, the person who's on medicine is it's a significantly challenging relationship, because this person has already bought the farm. At one point, they bought the farm. There is something so wrong with me that I'm going to put in a artificial chemical made in a high rise in some sort of laboratory into my mouth to fix the thing that God did wrong for me. You can do that. So that person now is learning that the medicines don't work. Where I really want to head them back to is maybe there was nothing wrong with them in the first place. Mm-hmm. Because if they still think there's something wrong with them, then just relieving them of their medicines leaves them with the very obvious question, which is, what do I take now? Because they're still compelled to fix what they already know is wrong with them. What people don't realize is that it's a universal truth that we all know there's something wrong with us. So one of the qualities of what normal looks like is knowing that there's something wrong with you. Each one of us knows we're entirely different, unique, special. We have our own little challenges that are unique to us. And there must be something wrong with me, because look how I feel when I wake up, or look what I just said to my kid, or look what I just put into my mouth, or whatever. There must be something wrong with me. But when we buy the truth that it's a universal response to the world, that each and every one of us knows that there's something wrong with us, then that makes that one of the most normal traits of what it is to be human. So if someone's already on medicine, walking them off medicine requires me to really kick the tires and make sure that they can realize, for no kidding, that there may have been nothing wrong with them even when they got started on this stuff.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. So it is that shift around understanding that there's nothing wrong with us. We are flawed. We will make mistakes, and that's okay. But I think part of the problem is there's so much shame hidden behind this idea of there's something wrong with me, so I need a fix. And then you're on this treadmill trying to fix it forever, and it's never going to get fixed. But what I'm hearing from you again, which is part of spirituality, is having this acceptance that, yes, I'm a flawed individual. I will make mistakes, and that is okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And when I really get that there may have been nothing wrong with me in the first place, when I really can step into that truth and really see that, like the shame that you're saying is stirring the drink. Although this is hard to say and it's hard to experience, and I think it's a challenge to even be willing to embrace this possibility. Shame is a choice too.
I agree. Yes.
Absolutely. Choice.
Yeah.
So to call shame as the cause is relinquishing the fact that you're driving this thing. You have sovereign agency. You're on the joystick and steering wheel of this thing called your life. And if you want to choose to be shame, you can. I hate shame. I had some this weekend. I hate it. I hate it. It's really rough experience. Right this moment, I don't have that shame. I don't know how it got washed away, because when it was on me, it was like a claw. It was I was buying into it. My whole Sunday was screwed up because of it. I got it. And it's manageable once I realize that it's a choice.
Yes.
The same data that could produce shame in me can produce any other experience in me as well. So I'd be very careful not to blame shame.
No, I think it's what I try to teach clients too is there's a difference between saying I'm a failure versus I failed, right? And that's the choice you're talking about, is we don't have to internalize it when it comes to taking mistakes. And that's where we fall into that trap. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate your willingness to come on here, Dr. Fred, and share your journey and your insight and wisdom. Thank you so much. Now, for listeners that want to learn more about your work, whether it's your podcast or some of the speaking engagements you're doing, what are some ways they can find you?
So this Wealth Builders thing is really fun, and you're going to have to deal with me there, I think, at least in one space, because now I'm shifting my practice to providing this educational model. But the best place to find me still is at my website. That's welcometohumanity.net, or the other website, which is drfred360.com. And both of those places lead to a possibility of a discovery call where I'll be glad to have an open conversation with any of your listeners about anything that's on their mind about anything, and see if we can create a match, or if not me, then someone else I might know in the field or elsewhere that might be good for you. Then I may then ask you a little bit about your financial status, but that's not for me to pry. That's for me to get that there's a place there where healing will upgrade your life tremendously. So that's the two places. I also, as I already mentioned, I hang out on Facebook way too much. Every minute I spend on Facebook is way too much. And so it's time for me to get out of there. And Facebook and LinkedIn. And then I have a pretty ripe YouTube channel as well, where a lot of my videos sit. And other than that, I'm not hiding anywhere. It's pretty easy to find me.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. We'll put all of that in the show notes, but thank you again for your time today.
My pleasure, of course. Thank you.